everyone. It's time to begin our board meeting for October 14, 2014. Kathy, may we have a roll call, please?
Okay. Alrighty. Odom? Here. Carroll? Here. Simmons?
Here.
Langston? I'm here. Lunsford?
Present. The quorum is present. First on the agenda is audience comments. This is the opportunity we give members of the community to make comments on items that are not on the agenda. We have 3 people who signed up for comments this evening. However, 2 issues are the same, which are the bus service. I'd like to ask if you are together, the people who are coming to speak about the bus service, Ms. Pittman and I think this is Rogers. If you are together, could you have one person, in the interest of time, one person represent your group? If you are not together, we'd be happy to hear from both of you. And the floor is yours, Ms. Pittman.
I'm not sure who Ms. Rogers is.
Okay.
I know Ms. Pittman. Oh,
Okay.
I didn't know. Maybe we're neighbors.
Could you come to the podium, please?
My name is Siobhan Pittman. I'm a Flossmoor Hills parent. My child is Anna Pittman, and she's currently in the 5th grade. On last year, it was approved by the board that bus services, we stay on the Gulfview Drive. Bus services were approved. From my recollection, it was for 2 years. Because of the danger that it is, they have no sidewalks to walk down. So if you go down 183rd, I believe that's, but if you go down Village Drive, excuse me, if you go down Village Drive and you walk our route, there's no way, there's no sidewalks to get to school until you reach just about that school. So because of the safety hazard, the board had agreed that they would provide bus services for us for free. September 11th is when we received the email. School had already started, fees had already been out and dispersed and everything. September 11th, we received an email stating that now what we looked at and what we agreed upon was, wow, this is kind of dangerous for our students to go ahead and walk this route. Right now, there's a speedometer because of how fast the people come down that way. So we're expecting our children to walk down the street with speeding cars, no sidewalk, and they are in the streets. So what we had agreed upon at the board, when I say we, I'm referring to the board as well as the parents, was a danger or was a concern, a safety concern for our students. Last year, for some reason, that has changed this year because I received a letter and an email that was told that now it's $350 for our child. Again, September 11th, school started prior to then, that our child, we will have to pay $350 for them to get to school. And it will have to be paid by October 1st. That was the first issue. The second issue, which I did speak to the principal as well as the superintendent about, I think that it was done in a very tacky manner. October 6th, I believe it was, my mother-in-law got a call because I wasn't able to be reached. My mother-in-law got a call that said that my child was not getting on the bus, that someone had to come pick her up. My concern with that was, it was a slip of the mind. I knew a board meeting was coming up. I sent out 3 emails prior to my child being kicked off the bus. Not one email was returned. When I called, the only answer that they had for me was, well, a letter went out September 11th. When you receive a new bill, and it's not a bill that you originally had, sometimes things will slip your mind. Things are going on in people's lives and work and other things going on. And I just felt that it was tacky to tell our children that you cannot board a bus. They knew the entire day that they were not going to let our children board the bus. No one decided to call prior to, no one decided to send out an email. I get phone blasts here constantly. I constantly get emails, phone calls, and not one person decided to say, hey, let's give these parents a last minute heads up that their child will not get on the bus. I spoke to Ms. McCraven. The check was sent. I actually tried to take the check up to the school. The check was sent the very next day because at this point I have no option. That is her transportation, and I do not want my child being hit by a car. So I guess I come to you for one, to figure out what changed your mind to say that it was a hazard last year and now this year it was not a hazard, and why did we wait until the middle of September before we decide to let parents know. And she's 5th grade, so that $300 was for $300 for outdoor ed. So now I need to come up with some more money to pay for outdoor ed.
Thank you for your comment. Before we address any of the comments, can we have the other comments from, I believe this, can't read the writing very well. Rogers, would you present your comments so we can just address the bus all at once?
Okay, my name is Katrina West Rogers. My daughter, Alessandra Rogers, she is in the second grade with the school, Mrs. McCray. I'm a little upset about the situation and how it was handled once again. It was very tacky, unprofessional. And the bus service, the only reason that Ms. McCray was informed about the children not being picked up on the route is because the bus driver felt guilty about not stopping to pick our children up and went to the school and told her that she was ordered not to pick these children up to go to school. Ms. McCraven in turn got in her car, drove up and down Village Drive telling the children and their parents, the bus is not going to be picking you up because you didn't pay. My thing did, somebody explained to me how these children were left like this in a situation, in a dangerous situation. Nobody followed through to make sure these children even got to school that day. And one child didn't show up to school till 10:30 in the afternoon, in the morning. Nobody followed up to see if these children even got to school safely. It shouldn't be about money. It should be about the safety of these children. I don't care if you want the money, then I'll give it to you. But don't have these children like this as a bargaining tool for money. That's not right. And I would like somebody to explain to me why all of a sudden it's a problem this year. Last year you were all with us, you came out there, you walked the sidewalk, you did everything that you were supposed to do to follow through. And this year you sneak a meeting past everybody, voted on what you wanted to do, and didn't tell nobody nothing until afterwards. You were there. I don't know your name, Mr. Dodson. You were there. You saw what happened last year. How did it change this year? I don't understand that. Sure, go ahead.
Before, I'm Merle Huckabee, and I'm not on your list. I came from ICU. My husband is in the hospital. I almost lost him yesterday. Wasn't at your board meeting, and for me to have to come out and to deal with something like this, my child, all these children are important to us. I want to go back, first of all, before we do anything, talking about bus fees, anything. Last year, we stood in this room, in October meeting, I'm looking at the minutes, I'm looking at the November minutes. You all said, and I don't know if these meetings are recorded, that these fees would be paid for 2 years while you worked with the village of Hazel Crest and the village of Flossmoor. Now, 6 parents heard that, and you're educators. The probability of all 6 of us needing miracle ears is kind of really, slightly unlikely. But that is what you said. When I sent all of you a letter, it wasn't some crazy lady ranting. It was simply about challenging you on your integrity of your word. Of course, Mr. Dustin said, well, it wasn't in the minutes. Well, I can look at your minutes. Your minutes simply just say that the bus routes would be paid. There was no indication of time. Because Ms. Rogers could not attend an approval meeting, if I may approach the board, thank God for technology. This is what I sent her last year, still on my phone. I had to figure out how to do this and say, I want to bring this to your attention. Why would I do this? Why would I say, hi, Trina, I went to the board meeting last night. Bus route was approved on both sides of the street in Feeway. This will only be in place 2 years. Hope all is well. Why would I do that? Why would I make that up? Ms. Ellis heard the same thing that I heard. Ms. Rogers was not here for that November meeting, but in the October meeting. And then we had, I think it was Mr. Davis from across the street. It was another parent. Why would I make that up? I'm just asking you all, if we say that character counts in our schools, as leaders, educators, as administrators, you have to have some integrity too, because if not, what can you expect from my children? My child, I didn't bring her here because, you know what, I try to teach my kids that life isn't always fair, and people are not going to always be right, and you don't know Miracle. Miracle is a special child. Every child is special, but the first thing when she found we were dealing with this in and she said, Mommy, they said 2 years. Did they lie? What do I tell her as a parent? What do I tell her when she sees you as a superintendent? Do I tell her, oh, yeah, he's a liar? No. This is why I brought the letter to your attention. This is why I said, come on, have you no shame? You said it. You all said you would be in your minutes. You also said you would be working with the village of Hazelcrest, the village of Flossmoor. None of that has happened, and you did not contact IDOT. The state law, the statute that you went ahead and you adopted, you know, I want you to know we appreciate the stops being in place. We recognize that you recognize that there is a danger there. But the state law, the statute simply is very simple. It really does say that if there's a vehicular hazard, that the school board should waive the fees. I'm not a lawyer. I have been in touch with Representative Al Riley, who did not contact his office at all in this. But the statute is here, it's plain, it's outlined.
All right.
It's really simple. And I'm just asking that you all would think this, especially considering the fees and things that you don't know what's going on in people's lives. But the 5th grade parents have certainly had to pay a lot, but it's not even about that. This community got hit with property taxes that same month in August. Why is it that the principal and administrator is so aggressive about getting this money, but nobody was aggressive about coming and saying, hey, parents that were there, for some reason we got to bring this back to the table. We need to talk about this. Nobody said anything. The second meeting, it could be recorded. My daughter was not in school. I lost 3 family members that I had to go bury the first week in September. So I was not here and could not be here.
All right.
Wouldn't have been here tonight, but my husband said, like he's in ICU, he said, please, if we were millionaires, it's a principle that's involved. We're asking you to follow through on what you said. You have not addressed the village of Flossmoor, you have not addressed the village of Hazelcrest, you have not worked with state legislators, you have not done what you said you were going to do in your minutes. And you certainly are not doing what you stood here and said, that this fee will be waived for 2 years.
Thank you for your comments. I don't mean to cut you off, but we do have to stay within the constraints of what is allowed for audience comments. We will take your comments into consideration. I will tell you that a decision was made by the board not to continue to pay the fees. We've had to make tough decisions around money. We just passed a budget that has $1.5 million deficit. So it's never the popular answer, but we're having to make difficult choices. Now, I will say this. I apologize for what your children experienced. And I will ask that our administration follow up and see what happened that day, if there was a breakdown in protocol, because I can see why you would be frustrated by that. The board will take this into consideration. For right now, the decision has been made not to pay for the bus service because we do not get reimbursed by the state for the bus service.
Not to cut you off, but if you all would just, State Representative Al Wright was standing out there last September. Fran LaBella told him basically, I don't need your help. He was telling her that he could help with IDOT and get this thing started and even could get IDOT on the phone right then and there. See, when you're talking about sitting with your, let me just say this. When I got the email from you saying we need to talk to our state legislators, community parents out there, this is where it begins. When you have them here for an issue that you think is small, You need these people for larger issues. This is about a partnership. We've got to network. It is not our responsibility to call state legislators. It is your responsibility as a board and as a superintendent to get on your phones, get away from behind those desks, and get in front of these people and partner with them for what these schools need. That is part of your job. We can only support you when you do what you're supposed to do. Now, it's just that simple. He's aware of it. I've also contacted the president of the village of Hazel Crest, Bernard Osbury. They are in session right now. These meetings are clashing, so they cannot be here. But I can get the conversation started. But when you shut me down about some small issues that you think are small to you, and then you come to me about some big issues, so you're talking about people that I got cell numbers to. I got to call it office. I got cell numbers to. And I'm not saying they're not going to do their job in helping you in Springfield, but it starts on an issue when you have them in front of you, you do not disrespect them and tell them you don't need them. When they're there telling you, we can partner together to make this happen.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is the I'm sorry.
Excuse me, before you go on, I just need to make sure I'm hearing from me. So what I hear you saying is that we are going to have to pay the $300 for the bus services, and it's going to stand for the remainder of the year, or you're saying just for right now, and right now you all are going to go into a closed session, that'll be part of your discussion, or you're not
It will not be a
discussing?
discussion held in closed session. We cannot have this discussion in closed session, okay? So any discussion we have around bus service will be held in open session.
Okay, so you're saying that it's fine.
However, you gotta take into consideration, we've just received some facts today, right? We need time as a board to digest those facts. All I can tell you for right now is the fee for the bus will have to be paid by the parent.
So, I know I'm on the agenda next. So I actually came to compliment you guys about handling the iPad situation around all the fees that were put on our, our children and ourselves the last day of school. So you guys did better this year. But what I want to say is that if my child has to go without an iPad so that their children, so they don't have to be burdened with the responsibility of paying for $350 or whatever they have to pay, like, the iPads are a pleasure, but our children's like, I don't know how you waited till this meeting to address this, because I would have been in their office banging down the door. But anyway, okay. So, like, if our children, if fourth graders and fifth graders and seventh graders have to go without these iPads, that technically they have their personal iPads anyway, if they have to go without this extra distraction, I think it's really a distraction, believe it or not. But anyway, but if children have to go without stupid iPads so that their children can get on the bus safely, I would send my child's iPad back tomorrow. But again, you all did a good job in handling the concerns we had around the $50 fees. So you all did a good job, so I'm giving you some credit. But I would like to see that be addressed in a more urgent and important manner than having people pay $350 for the next 2 years.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is the superintendent report. Mr. Dustin.
Thank you, Mr. Lunsford. First on the docket is enrollment dashboard. If you could pull that up, please. On the dashboard, you'll see that we're keeping the status with the class sizes that were discussed and presented. We do have an increase over last month of 18 more students. We're 51 students less than we were last year. The next item will be outdoor education program. It'll start next week. We have Flossmoor Hills that will be going. I want to let the board know on the 28th, I will be going to Michigan to visit for that day. I believe it's Thursday. Next is the State of the District Address, which is on October 22nd. Everyone is involved. We have communicated that through that flyer to the community. It was also sent to the Flossmoor Village, and I know that they have presented that as well. And annual tri-conference that will start on November 20th. And after that starts, we'll go through that weekend with that professional learning opportunities for the Board of Education. At our next committee, the whole meeting, there will be resolutions that will be present. and that'll be for the board to discuss, and you'll have to make a decision on what you're going to vote on, etc., for that meeting, which will take place at our November meeting before we go down to conference. And then Timmy will vote according to how those are. And lastly, Bruce Brozinski, if you would come up, I know that you want to present a banner to the Board of Education. Mr. Kaminsky, Ms. Westerman.
This banner is awarded to 15 schools throughout the state of Illinois. It's a sportsmanship banner for last year for our teams, and it's voted on by our division. So they voted us the sportsmanship award for the division that we're in. In the gymnasium at Parker Junior High. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is the consent agenda items. We have board minutes for the month of August and September up for approval, as well as approval of the school improvement plans. I'd like to approve all of the items at once, unless there's objection from the board. If not, I'll entertain a motion to accept the items on the consent agenda as presented. Ms. Odom, Mr. Second from Mr. Paredes, or you have a question?
Yeah, actually, I was not at the August 12th meeting, so I could not.
I spoke to our district council this morning. We can't approve all of these without people abstaining from certain.
Okay.
Okay. All right, so is that a second, Mr.
Yes.
Paredes? Second from Mr. Paredes. Roll call, please, Kathy.
Okay, Odom?
Yes.
Carol?
Yes.
Simmons?
Yes.
Paredes?
Yes.
Langston? Lunsford?
Yes, the motion passes. Next on the agenda.
I'm sorry, I'm going to clear this out. Were there an opportunity to get a comment, or just as passes over one?
I'm sorry.
All right.
Next on the agenda are committee reports. First up is the speed report. Mrs. Langston is our speed representative.
We haven't had a few meetings
Okay.
since our last.
Okay. Thank you. So there's no report from speed. Next is the district leadership council report.
We can move that to November meeting if you like.
All right, and then the next report is the community connections committee report. Mrs. Farrell?
We had, a committee meeting that consisted of parents and the school administrators and the board representative there. There were several comments that came up that really sparked a lot of conversation. It actually was a very good venue for the parents to have really candid conversations about what was going well, what wasn't, and what they wanted to see. And I think it was a good start to where we need to go. There was some suggestions that were presented to the superintendent regarding how we communicate better, communicate and work with Flossmoor, as well as other avenues from a communication standpoint. That was a big issue that obviously came up. Well, not obviously, but it was a really good opportunity to speak to that. So I think it's a great forum. One of the things we did talk about was the fact that it was a great conversation with a small group, how do we make sure that that is something that is continued outside of a large group. But the representatives that were there were happy to be part of the meeting, were very engaged, and again, presented a lot of communication. I'm not sure when the next one is set for.
We haven't set one yet.
Okay, so that was one of the outstanding items that needed to happen. But it was a very good candid forum. We had parents there that were very excited about some things, there were people there that had some issues, and were able to really speak up. So I think that was a good strong for a first meeting.
Thank you, Mrs. Harrell. Next on the agenda is approval of the bills. Mrs. Langston has the bills for this month. Mrs. Langston, for sure.
So just for clarification, or just to make sure the minutes are correct, I did not send the bills. At a past board meeting, a majority of the board voted that the bills would not be sent home with board members. So actually what I reviewed was the voucher listing, not the actual bills. So I think that's something moving forward that we need to correct in our memo, just so we are actually saying what happens the board members are not reviewing the actual bills. That being said, I did review the vouchers, and I had about 13 items that I had questions on that I sent to Ms. Lavella. And she, as she always does, was able to answer all of those questions to my satisfaction. And I will say this, that even though we have had lots of conversations about our budget and what we need to do to change that budget, I will say that Ms. Lavella does a good job of managing our resources. And the way that she was able to answer my very numerous amount of questions very specifically and thoroughly, with answers that satisfied me, I just want to say I do appreciate how diligent you are with the resources of our community. That being said, I will move to approve the bills in the amount of $1,456,355 for the month of October.
Is there a second? Mrs. Harrell? May I have a roll call, please, Kathy?
Okay, Carol? Yes. Paredes?
Yes.
Odom? Yes. Langston?
Yes.
Simmons?
Yes.
Lunsford?
Yes, the motion passes. Next on the agenda is approval of the payroll. We have a recommendation from the administration to approve payroll for the month of September in the amount of $1,335,735.77. I will entertain a motion to accept the recommendation from the administration. Mrs. Langston? Mrs. Harrell? A roll call, please. Kathy?
Okay, Odom? Yes. Paredes?
Yes.
Simmons?
Yes.
Langston?
Yes.
Carol?
Yes.
Lunsford?
Yes, the motion passes. Next on the agenda is the memorandum of understanding. Mr. Lester?
Yes, just real quick, I want to go back quickly to the bill section. Just let the Board of Education know, you know how I've been sending home the construction bill information on the change orders? Well, sometimes we don't have that information on weeks it's coming home, so it's a better idea to send that information home on a monthly basis. So we've elected to do that. You'll see it in your monthly bills with that information. If something big comes up, a construction change order will let you know right away. But in addition to that, you'll be able to take a look at, in the report that you have, the other funds that deal in regards to life safety and things of that nature that will assist. And if you have any questions, please call. So it's kind of a monitoring. All right, so thank you. And then next, the memorandum of understanding. We brought this to the Board of Education, I believe it was this summer, but after negotiations was completed, we had a hard time dealing finding a resolution for vacation time for 12-month employees. We believe that this memorandum of understanding will address that need. And with that being said, the association's already signed off on it with approval tonight. The Board of Education approval, it will be agreed upon, and we should be able to move forward.
I'll entertain a motion to accept the recommendation to approve the memo of understanding as recommended by the board. Mrs. Odom, is there a second? Mrs. Langston, are there any questions? Not, Kathy, may we have a roll call, please?
Okay, Paredes?
Yes.
Odom? Yes. Carol?
Yes.
Langston?
Yes.
Simmons?
Yes.
Lunsford?
Yes, the motion passes. Next on the agenda are the change orders for the construction project.
Yes, thank you. If Mr. Gaggy could come up and talk about this, but at our last committee of the whole meeting, we knew we had a change order of approximately $23,000 that was within our contingency fund. There was for some necessary work. That's come down a little bit, but we also have another change order that will take place, and that is around $60,000. All of that is within the contingency plan. And you don't know, we're still in the ground, so those things were discussed by architects, et cetera, that may be happening. So we're almost out of the ground in a lot of places. And if you want to go ahead and explain that would be
Well, maybe by prefacing it, as Craig said, this does not change the contract value. When we're coming out of the ground and we have the soils report we have, we set aside some funds in case. Agri-paving is the large one, $60,905.59. We still have $14,000 in change left in unused contingency. We're confident that will take us through the rest of the project with agri-paving. Tower contracting, it's a change of $19,209, all related to excavating, exposing soil, the geotechnical firm that did the boring, evaluating soil and saying, we need to go down a little deeper. I used all of their reports and calculated the volume of material that was removed and the volume of stuff that went back in. We had unit prices in the bid documents, so there was no way for them to suggest that there was more work or less work. And the unit prices, based on our history, were very, very reasonable, very fair. And although Tower had felt that there was about $40,000 of work, our calculations, which they've accepted, are $19,000. We are on the ground. All the foundations are in, all the backfill has been taken care of. The only thing that's left is the sidewalks on between the parking area and the building. Don't anticipate that being a big issue, but it's still excavating, exposing soils. But we're confident we have more than that protection in the contracts. Any other questions I can try to answer? Yes.
Yeah, I think we answered this. You said we have $14,000 left in the contingency
For
for
advocating.
advocate. So there are different contingencies for each of them?
Yes, for each contract.
How much left do we have with top?
Tower, 55,000.
Oh, okay, all right. So that, the closest we're coming to that cap is that with the first one, and
Right.
we're comfortable that that's not going to take some.
And if you may recall, I suggested that next summer, when we rebuild the original parking, the drive, that one is over excavated. And my best opinion, watching all the trucks that have been going across that, we'll be able to remove the paving, replace the stone base, and not have to pay on it. So we'll get money back at the same unit price that we were paying out for the bus drive.
Mrs. Harrell, when you see the sheets that I'm giving you once a month now with the individual contracts, I've amended them now this month to include how much contingency for each of the projects, so you can keep track of what's already built into that project and where you are on that. So if you look at those sheets, you'll see there as well.
Okay, great, thank you.
Question? Thank you.
I will entertain a motion to accept the recommendation made by the board. Mrs. Carroll, is there a second? Mrs. Bodum, can you do a roll call, please?
Okay, Carol? Yes. Langston? Yes. Simmons?
Yes.
Odom? Yes. Paredes?
Yes.
Lunsford?
Yes, the motion passes. Next on the agenda is approval of the amendment to the scope intergovernmental agreement. Mr. Justice?
Yes, we're bringing this forward. Scope asked us to do this. They made a change, and that change is in their legislative committee, and it has been renamed to council instead. So what they would like to do is have our board sign off on that, our board secretary, board president. So I'm bringing that to you for approval on that. Once that's done, we'll send it to them. We're already a part of scope. We've been with them for 2 years now. It's a legislative group where we learn about different things going on in the city.
So we are only voting on changes in council?
That's it, yeah. Not a major thing,
Yeah, just.
but we have to go through the formal process.
Any other questions? We'll entertain a motion to accept the recommendation to amend the scope intergovernmental agreement. Mr. Paredes and Mrs. Langston. Roll call, please, Kim.
Okay, Langston? Yes. Odom? Yes. Carroll?
Yes.
Paredes?
Yes.
Simmons?
Yes.
Lunsford?
Yes, motion passes. Next on the agenda is approval of the superintendent evaluation tool. Last spring, when we had our retreat and our Illinois Association of School Board rep came in, there was a strong recommendation that we go to a formal processing of using an evaluation tool to evaluate our superintendent. I want to say that this has nothing to do with our current superintendent, but just one of the tools in place for any superintendent was the recommendation. So we formed a committee to review some of the documents that were presented to us by the state, and the committee came up with recommendations which we discussed on the last CAL. I'll turn it over to you, Mrs. Carroll, to discuss.
Okay, after our meeting, then we went, I met with the superintendent once again to review for any questions, and then also spoke with the IASB rep, Barbara Tony, to get further clarification, so I understood very clearly what our, the scope of our charge was, and then what will be going forward. So, a couple of things that came out of that meeting, when we presented the first examples to you, it actually had standards in there that were from one of the examples they gave us from the state of Oregon, and the IASB rep directed me to the ISLIC standards, which also superintendent gave me as well. So those were from Illinois. And so that was one of the changes. You received in your packet a list of any changes that were made from the initial recommendation, including small things like just putting a logo on it, adopting our language, and then some other changes as well. And one of the just clarifications, the scope of our committee was to put a tool framework in place only, no content. So the content that was mentioned there as an example was actually removed. So what you have in front of you is kind of a skeleton. It is a template that we'll be voting on today. The next steps would be to have Barbara Tony come in and facilitate a session so that we populate that with information that coincides with the superintendent's contract, fleshing out the language that has to do with ISLIC standards or how the superintendent does his work, and then also if there are any other goals that we would like to put in there as a board. So that's it. That's what we're voting on. I did have several questions that were presented from one of our fellow board members, Christine Marr. She's not here today. She presented the questions. I would like to address a couple of them that did have to do just with the scope of our committee, which is the tool itself. Anything else outside the scope, I need to address as we go forward with our Tony. So if you allow me that time, okay? Out of the questions that were presented, she asked the question about all the ISLIC standards from the CCSO org, and I'm combining this, so what is it basically? The Council of the Chief State of School Officers, that's what it is. It's a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization of public officials who head departments of elementary and secondary education in the United States, the District of Columbia, the Department of Defense, Education Activity, and the 5 U.S. territories. There are multiple states to include this, and they put in standards for school leadership. Illinois is one of those as well. It is not a trade organization that we belong to. IASB, though, has adopted those and recommends the use of those. Let's see. So that's that. The second question, is this organization to which the district belongs, and as I stated, it is not a trade organization. How did this committee decide upon a specific evaluation tool? I presented that information in the last meeting notes, so you can refer back to those that we specifically talked about it. Just as a small refresher, the IASB gave us 6 sample tools. They were simple tools. We looked at those tools and combined the best of all of them. They basically, there were 3 sections that all of them outlined. It was a matter of how it was formatted, and then going back to the superintendent and kind of talked about just easier to read. Instead of putting it this way, put it that way, and that's how we ended up with the tool. How will the evaluation tool be used? It is an annual evaluation. The superintendent, just as before, one of the things Christine Marks actually brought up, and then the superintendent gave me a copy of it, that evaluations are not new to the district. Former superintendent didn't have one as close as also previous one, so it's not something new to the district, but it is used on an annual basis. And you see in the tool we presented you, the reasons why you do an evaluation are for accountability. It is for an opportunity to have a collaborative relationship and communication tool with the superintendent and board to build that relationship, and then also for contractual, talk about contractual Why did this tool stand out from others that the committee reviewed? Again, as I stated before, this was a, not hot pocket, we looked at all of the tools and looked at what was best. All the tools spoke to what you do and how you do it, how we presented it, how it looked best, how we're able to clearly communicate is why this was chosen. What other Illinois districts use these ISLIC standards for their evaluations? I did not go further into that. I spoke with our IASD rep and then spoke with her, the evaluations, and then our committee, and then also spoke with the superintendent. So, and have any board members from other districts using this tool in contact with their input? No, this is our district, so we do what's best for our district. What was considered was the 6 samples that were provided to us from the IASB. Afterwards, I did look at the previous superintendent's evaluation that Christine had mentioned. So we looked at that together with the superintendent, and that's it. The other questions that our board member presented actually have to do with the content of what's in the cycle, all of that, and that is not, it's not, it wasn't in the scope of what we were to do. So, that's it. Are there any other questions that you may have for the committee?
Let's do a motion, and then we can ask questions. I'll entertain a motion to accept the recommendation made by the administration to accept the superintendent evaluation tool. Ms. Paredes, second. Mrs. Langston, second.
Who seconded it?
Mrs. Langston.
Okay.
Are there any questions from the board?
Mr. Russell, do you have anything to add? Sounds like this was a collaborative effort, and that after we discussed this at the committee meeting, there was yet another meeting to follow up with, just with you, Sarah. And so you're okay with this skeleton?
I'm very pleased with it. It was wonderful working with Ms. Harrell. It's a good tool. Well, we looked at the old one, or the other one. There's 2 different ways of evaluation. I was evaluated a little bit differently in the first couple of years. This one adds a rating onto it. There was one with the former superintendent. We looked at it. It was pretty outdated. I think this one will really help.
And the skeleton will be filled with content that is also a collaborative effort and will be, I think, I saw a reference of ISB representation.
Yes, Barbara Tony is our IASD rep, and she's what I spoke with as well. That part of the process is a facilitated session to help us then to populate, to make sure that it is something that is the board approves as well as the superintendent, because that has to be the conversation. That this is, it's a transparent, open tool, and then with the guidance, so that it does make sense, so that there's no fracture moment in the end, that there's nothing you put in it, but how do you populate in the beginning to ensure in the end that you're actually rating or discussing the superintendent's performance based upon what was transparently said at the beginning.
So John, what is being presented tonight is a skeleton that can be used for anyone. It's not specific to Mr. Duster. It's just a tool. What will happen next is that the ISB rep will come back in, we'll have another session with us, and we'll take the superintendent's goal, and that's when we start building the evaluation tool to be specific to the superintendent.
And will that be done with the full board or just with these samples?
It will be another retreat with the full board.
Can I speak to just one more thing? One of the things Barbara Tony specifically said is like, we can make recommendations, but that's a better conversation because the board, this is the board, this is the voice of the board, it's not one person. So the following meeting that the superintendent and I had was simply to address any concerns, questions, get his input, but any conversation that has to do with content have to be with the board.
Are there any other questions? Not, Catherine, have a roll call, please.
Okay, Oda?
Yes.
Carol?
Yes.
Simmons?
Yes.
Paredes?
Yes.
Langston?
Yes.
Lunsford?
Yes, and the motion passes. Next on the agenda is executive session. We will move into executive session for matters related to personnel and residency. I anticipate that we will be in executive session for about an hour. We will return to open session.